This is Christmas in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. We are going to begin a new unit called Moving West. In the 1800s, many people in America moved out west. They wanted to take a chance on the unknown and try to make a better life for themselves and their families in the territories of California and Oregon. A real-life example of this is the story of Laura Ingalls Wilder and her childhood as her family became one of many to take the risk to abandon everything that they know and move out west in search of a better life. A small section of her childhood story is told in her book, Christmas in the Big Woods. Why go west? During the 1840s and 1850s, newspapers reported stories of rich and fertile land in the Northwest. This land was called Oregon, and missionaries that visited Oregon to tell its inhabitants about Christianity praised the land in letters they sent back east. Publications printed pictures of beautiful and available land, and overcrowded eastern cities led many to pack up everything they owned and head westward. People began to catch Oregon fever, a desire to start a brand new life with the promise of lush land that would yield many crops. Who longed to move west? They became known as immigrants. These people were from every class of American society and included farmers, cattlemen, homesteaders, tradesmen, businessmen, journalists, missionaries, gamblers, and miners. Laura Ingalls Wilder's book, Christmas in the Big Woods, details the life of her family traveling west and becoming homesteaders in unknown territory in the late 1860s. Wilder and her family moved 6 times before settling for good when she was 13. This includes Wisconsin, Indian Territory in Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, and South Dakota. Though she had a very happy childhood, Wilder and her family endured many of the same trials and obstacles that every other homesteader family endured when trying to build a new life from the ground up in the West. They were plagued with crop failure, starvation, sickness including malaria, infant death, intense rain, and snowstorms. Just like other families pioneering, to begin their journey westward, Wilder's family sold almost everything they owned that wasn't necessary for daily survival. They packed up their remaining possessions and food in a covered wagon and piled them together. They traveled in this wagon for thousands of miles to reach the unclaimed land that had been promised that was waiting for them in Western Territory. Along the way came shortages of food, many illnesses, severe weather conditions, and fatigue as they made their way west. Once arriving at each of the places they would call home, the difficulties did not end there. Wilder and her family had to work extremely hard to survive. In her books, Wilder shares stories of plowing the ground for crops, making clothes, preparing and storing food, building a house that could withstand harsh winter storms, hunting, and gathering firewood. If they needed something, they had 2 options. They could make it themselves or drive miles away to the nearest town to trade and bargain for it at the general store. If they did not harvest lots of crops, they had no money to buy necessities that they couldn't make or grow themselves. This was the case more times than not, thanks to the unpredictable and extreme seasons of weather, and often Wilder and her family went without. When times were good, her father was able to trade for flour, salt, and white sugar. This was no exception, even at Christmas time, and holidays were often particularly hard for the Ingalls family. Even so, at 4 years old in the big woods of Wisconsin, Laura is very excited because Christmas is coming. Their cousins are coming to visit for the holidays, and they are sure that Santa is coming, in spite of the cold and snowy weather. As was traditional for this time of year, Laura's mother was very busy making good things for Christmas. She baked salt rising bread, rye and Indian bread, Swedish crackers, and baked beans with salt pork and molasses. She made vinegar and dried apple pies and filled a big jar with cookies. For a very special treat, one morning her mother boiled molasses and sugar until it made a thick syrup. Her father brought in pans of clean white snow, and Laura and her sister poured the syrup on the snow to make snow cake. The day before Christmas, Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter and the cousins, Peter, Alice, and Ella, came to visit Laura's family. They spend the holidays together as one big family, and Wilder recounts it as one of the best Christmases she remembers experiencing will travel. Though life as homesteaders out west was full of hardship and struggle, it wasn't all terrible. Christmas in the Big Woods is just one of many recounts of Wilder's childhood that demonstrates just what it was like to grow up as a pioneer in Western America in the 1800s. Through death, illness, starvation, and storms, Wilder and her family persevered and were able to build a successful life for themselves out west. She and her family represent one of thousands that braved the unknown in the hopes of a new start in America's Western territory.